Well, good morning. It's always a pleasure to be with my colleagues, Senator Whitehouse, Congressman Langevin, and Congressman Cicilline. And indeed, it's always a pleasure to be with the dedicated men and women of the U.S. Postal Service. And Brian Avila from Local 387 is here. Others have come by earlier to say hello. We want to recognize, as every American does, how valued the Postal Service is. From the earliest days of the Republic, the post office was a symbol of America, of community, of communication, of getting things done, of progress, of economic development. And it remains that way today for millions of Americans. The Postal Service is part of their lives. They look forward to the day, every day, when the mail comes, when their medicines come, when vital information comes to them. However, this critical work is being deliberately undermined by President Trump, who seems determined to slow down service due to his opposition to universal voting by mail. Indeed, Postmaster General DeJoy has instituted organizational and operational changes that are slowing the delivery of mail under the guise of improving service. And as we've seen, that's just not true. These changes have led to delays in the processing of all types of mail, including packages for small businesses and medications for seniors and for veterans. This self-manufactured crisis and intentional delays in service for political reasons are unacceptable. But they're particularly outrageous when you have a situation of a pandemic that has claimed 170,000 lives or more. The post office today is more important than it's ever been, because people are facing not only the normal rigors of life, but a pandemic that is taking Americans left and right. They're more dependent on the Postal Service for the delivery of goods, for the delivery of medicines, for those things that are so necessary. And we have to keep this post office working for all of us. It's critical to the functioning of our nation, to our daily lives, to our country's economy. And that's why, along with my colleagues, we've consistently supported the men and women of the Postal Service. And I believe that Postmaster General DeJoy is absolutely obligated to testify, as he intends to do in the Senate and the House, to try to explain what he's doing to undermine the post office. He should also halt the implementation of these operational and organizational changes that damage the ability of the men and women of the post office to do their job. And furthermore, the Trump administration and Majority Leader Mitch McConnell should stop obstructing passage of the Postal Service funds that were included by my House colleagues, David and Jim, in the HEROES Act months ago. Had we taken up in the Senate, with the support of the President, the HEROES Act, and passed it, we would not have these problems. The post office would be functioning, we'd be ready for the election. This should not be a partisan issue. The American people depend on, believe in, and support the post office. They want us to support the post office. And with that, let me recognize my colleague, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
Thank you, Jack. From the first days of our republic, through thick and thin, through rain and sleet and dark of night, the Postal Service has been basic infrastructure of American society. Postal workers are known and loved in their communities. They bring treats in the wagon for the neighborhood dogs. They're a friendly face for people living alone. And very often, if mail is not picked up, they're a lifeline to let people know that something is wrong for an individual living alone. The Postal Service has essentially, for the duration of our republic, been as reliable as gravity. You know it's going to be there. You know the mail is going to be delivered. It takes the Trump administration to foul that up. What is going on? Well, the president said it himself. He's doing it to impede mail balloting so that the mail won't be timely delivering those ballots. Then, of course, he got caught out saying the quiet part out loud, so he said that nothing's going on here. So let's take a look. 46 states have had their postmasters report to them that the changes in service delivery are going to impact mail ballot delivery in those states. Postal workers are observing that their schedules are changing, that mail is being brought back to the station to have to be resorted and put through again, which has not happened before, that sorters and machinery are being moved around. And I have a constituent, Pat from Coventry, who contacted me to say that for the first time her husband's pension check came late. They both get pharmaceuticals, she and her husband. For the first time, those pharmaceuticals came late, and she sends a car payment in by mail, and for the first time, she got notified that by the time it got to the car payment, the car loan place, it was also late. So everywhere you look around the Postal Service, you see that something is up, and we're here to ask the Trump administration to knock it off. They have created enough turmoil, they have created enough anxiety, they have exhibited enough incompetence. At least leave our Postal Service alone. And don't blame Democrats for the lack of funding. The Democratic-controlled House passed $25 billion in funding that your Republican majority leader in the Senate has refused to even bring up for a vote. So let's get this solved, knock it off, and let's put the Postal Service back where it needs to be as a reliable baseline piece of American infrastructure. Thanks very much, and I'm now proud to turn it over to the leader of our House delegation, Jim Langevin.
Sheldon, thank you very much, and I echo what both Senator Reid and Senator Whitehouse have had to say. I'm proud to be here with them, along with my colleague in the House, Congressman David Cicilline. It is absolutely essential that we are here today to speak out against the actions that are taking place that are weakening our postal delivery system. It's so important that we bring attention to this unprecedented attack on a truly essential service that millions of Americans rely on. And one of the primary institutions of government service that still have the confidence and respect of the American people. Again, I want to thank Senator Reid, Senator Whitehouse, and Congressman Cicilline for their leadership and their partnership on speaking out and condemning the actions of the Trump administration that have weakened our postal service. The unilateral changes in policy and personnel that Postmaster General Louis DeJoy have implemented in the United States Postal Service are unacceptable, particularly as we navigate this pandemic. And I'm outraged because these changes pose a threat to public health and the integrity of our elections at a time when mail delivery is more important than ever. And I want to pause here for a minute just to salute our incredible letter carriers that go to work every day doing their very best to get the mail to its intended destination on time as quickly as they possibly can. But the issues arising from cost-cutting measures like slashing overtime and decommissioning mail sorting machines and removing collection boxes will only hurt the American people. So let me be clear, this is more than just about voting by mail. Delays in delivery impact seniors and veterans who get their prescriptions by mail, small businesses who use the post office to connect with customers, families awaiting stimulus payments and other important correspondence, and of course the more than 600,000 postal workers across the nation who again do important work every day getting the mail to where its intended destination to the best of their ability on time like it's supposed to be. These folks have been placed on the back burner while Postmaster General DeJoy undermines the Postal Service to serve the political interests of Donald Trump. Well, this is a blatant violation of public trust, and it is enough. New leadership is needed. I believe that Postmaster General DeJoy should resign. So right now, strong leadership and proper support is essential in the United States Postal Service to face the influx of mail expected in the coming months. That's why I'm a co-sponsor of the Delivering for America Act to reverse Postmaster General DeJoy's operational changes and ensure services continue through the end of the pandemic, just as they were starting on January 1st, 2020. I'm pleased that the House will reconvene this weekend. Congressman Cicilline and I will be going back to Washington for votes on Saturday on this critical legislation to help save the post office and maintain quality service. Just in closing, I also want to bring attention to the fact that the House has been working to preserve this service, as both Senator Reid and Senator Whitehouse have mentioned. The service is enshrined in the United States Constitution and is a pillar of our democracy. And again, the postal system, the Postal Service, one of the most respected institutions of government. In fact, more than 3 months ago, the House passed the HEROES Act, which included $25 billion to help the United States Postal Service to continue effective operations and meet the demands that are on their plate. So the resources will be there, and Mitch McConnell will just take up the bill, which he has refused to do, that and many other important pieces of legislation. It's going to, the legislative graveyard of Mitch McConnell. Unfortunately, many critical bills, again, languish on his desk in this graveyard, along with provisions made to another round of stimulus checks, hazard pay for essential workers, aid to states, and continue to enhance unemployment benefits. So the Postal Service keeps us connected, and that's why it's more important than ever and critical than ever that we act to do something about this. I'm going to continue to fight my fight against any effort to sabotage it, and I just want to thank my colleagues for being here today. It is now my pleasure to turn the mic over to my colleagues in the 1st Congressional District, Congressman David Cicilline.
Good morning. It's great to be here with all of you. I'm really proud to join my colleagues in the delegation to bring attention to the shameless attempts by the President and the Postmaster General to degrade the U.S. Postal Service and to delay and reduce services to the American people and to Rhode Islanders. I want to acknowledge Brian Avila from Local 387 and really begin by saluting the great men and women who work in the U.S. Postal Service. Many of them are veterans who have served our country in other ways, but one of the reasons that the U.S. Postal Service is one of the most beloved agencies of government, and maybe the most beloved agency of government, is because of the service it provides and because of the centrality it plays in the lives of communities all across this country. And in fact, it's not only a pillar of our democracy enshrined in our Constitution, but it actually is what knitted us together as separate colonies into the United States of America, the ability to communicate and be connected through the U.S. Postal Service. And so today the U.S. Postal Service provides incredibly important services to the American people. People rely on it. Every single household in America relies on the Postal Service for life-saving prescriptions, for Social Security checks, supporting thousands of small businesses every single day. Veterans who rely on the VA mail-order pharmacy program have reported delays causing medications to sit in post offices while prescriptions are at risk of spoiling before being delivered. And COVID-19 has only further underscored the importance of the service of the U.S. Postal Service. We cannot allow the President to play political games with people's livelihoods during a pandemic. These operational changes that have been put into place have resulted in leaving mail behind at distribution centers. They've resulted in hiring freezes, regional downsizing, and other changes to undermine long-standing organizational norms. And these are leading to delays in services and reductions in services. They also fundamentally threaten the right of people to vote from home or vote by mail. This is an effort by the President to degrade delivery standards in a blatant attempt to impede Americans' right to vote from home this November. And in fact, he said it publicly. If we don't give money to the Postal Service, it will be impossible for people to vote by mail. This is from the President of the United States. It's shocking. I've called on the Postmaster General to be removed immediately and the operational services be fully restored. The stakes are too high, and what we're going to do on Saturday, as Congressman Langevin mentioned, we're returning to Washington for an emergency session of Congress on Saturday. We will pass legislation, which I have co-sponsored, to fully fund the post office, to provide the $25 billion, which we already did in the HEROES Act, but in addition to restore service delivery to what it was before the operational changes that Mr. DeJoy put in place, to put back the mail sorting machines, to put back the mailboxes, to allow overtime so that mail can continue to be delivered unimpeded. There are nearly 2,679 employees of the U.S. Postal Service here in Rhode Island. I want to end by thanking them for their extraordinary service. Our whole delegation is committed to fighting as hard as we can to protect the Postal Service, to protect the right of people to vote from home, to make sure prescription drugs get delivered to veterans and others who need them, and to be sure that small businesses that rely on daily postal delivery are not adversely impacted. I want to just end with showing you some photographs of images that are happening all across this country. Post mailboxes locked so that they can't be used by citizens of this country. And a truck filled with mailboxes that have been just picked up, making delivery more difficult and making it more difficult for people to vote by mail. These are just examples of what's happening all across this country. The four of us and members of Congress all across this country are using today as a day of action to commit to taking on the Trump administration's effort to degrade the U.S. Postal Service and to protect our democracy.
Where were those pictures taken?
Chris? These are not Rhode Island photos. Yeah, Washington and Oregon. And I think the four of us are happy to take any questions that folks might have.
Questions? Oh.
Has there been any denigration of service here? We've heard about machines taken out of service. Is any of that happening here in the post office in Rhode Island?
Yes, we're hearing that from postal workers, that there is a denigration of service, that they can't do what they used to do. It's deliberate inefficiency that they're creating, which is ironic because the whole rationale was supposedly to make the post office more effective and more efficient. But we are hearing from postal workers that this is happening, and it'll get worse unless we step up. That's why we're stepping up today.
And one thing that we're hearing is that for the first time, mail is being returned at the end of the day because the delivery route has not been completed, either because of an absence of a vehicle or because of the unavailability of overtime. Mail has to come back, and then it has to be resorted to be delivered the next day, which is incredibly inefficient. But that's happening for the first time as a result of the operational changes that the Postmaster General has put into place.
What does that tell you?
It tells me that the operational changes that the Postmaster General, who, by the way, is a Trump mega donor who has no experience in the Postal Service, he put those into place, in my view. The effect of it is to delay delivery of mail, to make it more difficult for people to use mail, to make it more difficult for people to receive prescription drugs and other essential mail on time. And of course, it has the added benefit from the president's perspective to make it more difficult to slow the delivery of mail ballots. The president said that. That was an admission he made publicly when he said, if I don't have a deal on the HEROES Act, which includes funding for the post office won't have the money to do the millions and millions of ballots that they expect will be mailed in this election. It's a shocking admission by the President of the United States.
Have they removed any of the sorting machines that have been done in other states here in Rhode Island?
What they have done with the sorting machines is they have removed them in effect, but removing is not physically removing them. They reconfigure them so they have fewer operational sorting machines in effect, which means they can't do as much, and then it also means if one goes down, they don't have an adequate replacement. So that has happened here.
How do we do on that, Brian?
Okay. Getting
Getting expert check.
anybody else?
What's the recommendation to a Rhode Islander who might be fearful that their ballot doesn't get in on time? Is the recommendation, I mean, look, Rhode Island's a small state, get it in early?
I think that would be the best recommendation for anyone throughout the United States. If you're going to use a mail ballot, you mail it as early as possible. We're trying our best to get the resources so that this will not be a problem, but I would assume that if it is, get your ballot in immediately. First thing you can.
So you get the Postmaster General in front of you. What then?
Well, I think the American public can make a judgment about how credible he is and how his arguments about efficiency, do they make any sense? I don't think they make any sense. But we'll also have experts from the Postal Service and people that can draw a contrast between what he's saying and what the reality is. And I think it'll be quite revealing. And the whole goal, though, is to not just to have a discussion. The whole goal is to get the Postal Service back to where it's operating. I mean, we all grew up, at least I did, with the notion when, particularly in the holiday season, They hire all sorts of extra people. They do everything they could to get all the Christmas cards out, all the Hanukkah cards out. And now for the first time you have the President of the United States saying, I'm going to constrain the system so much that there's a pretty good chance that the ballots won't get in on time. I mean, that sounds so contradictory to what the post office has always stood for, is that in times of national sort of importance, like the holidays, we'll put extra people on. We'll work overtime. We'll do what we got to do. We'll get the mail through. Sleet, snow, rain, it's not going to stop us. The president's attitude is, I'm going to stop it.
Obviously, the post office, as well mentioned, is an important service for the elderly, for our veterans, but there's plenty of people overseas who only have the option to vote by mail, who are serving our country now.
Absolutely.
What's the impact that you guys expect to see if it is a thing for them?
That is one of the most compelling arguments. Most military personnel overseas vote by mail, and they vote. And they would be caught up in this disaster also. And it's terribly ironic that men and women who are sacrificing their lives, separated from their families, for the fighting for the fundamental rights, one of which is the right to vote, could see their votes lost or miscounted or just not arriving in time. So that's another factor that's critical.
It's really important to acknowledge that it's not just the funding, it is the operational changes, because even if it's fully funded, as we hope it will be, that doesn't solve the problem. If Mr. DeJoy's operational changes remain in place, no overtime, reduction of hours of post offices being open, removal of sorting machines. So the legislation we'll take up has to address both, and it will. It will provide the funding again, and it will reverse the operational changes that are resulting in delays in services and delivery of mail that is intended to impact vote by mail, but is also impacting prescription drugs, overseas voting, small business, etc. So it's both of those things that have to be addressed.
Do you believe that any legislation written will have bipartisan support to actually be called to a vote? Because you mentioned, the majority leader isn't taking things that have been approved already up on a vote in the Senate floor.
Well, I think it's significant that the Senate has scheduled a hearing this Friday, so that they're feeling the pressure. And the House has a hearing next week. And I think the American public will be speaking out loud and clear, and it'll be felt, I hope, by both sides. And it should be. Again, this shouldn't be a partisan issue. Getting the mail out should be something it's what we do in America. It's what we put it in the Constitution. The post office is in the Constitution. It's that important. So we should get the job done.
I think
That's why Speaker Pelosi calling the vote on Saturday in the House is important. Because we'll find out how bipartisan it is. We'll find out whether the Republicans in the House are more loyal to Donald Trump or more loyal to their constituents' need for prompt and reliable mail service.
And I'm anxious to hear Postmaster DeJoy when he's brought before Congress as he tries to defend the actions that he's taken, which are outrageous and clearly designed to weaken the post office and mail delivery service. If there was a need and he was interested in actually providing the service that the American people expect, he would be fighting for more resources if there were shortfalls, if they needed extra resources. And clearly on the House side, there are plenty of resources that we're ready to provide. We just need the Republican colleagues on the Senate side to take up that bill, which they have not, because of Mitch McConnell's lack of action and his clearly feels no urgency to do anything to strengthen or help the Postal Service.
What's your response to Kevin McCarthy? He says, well, the Democrats didn't get what they wanted in the negotiations over the coronavirus bill, so now they're focused on the post office.
Ridiculous. What we want is to be able to fund state and local governments, to be able to provide health care to people in the midst of a pandemic. We want to make sure that we have elections that are not only legitimate, but people have confidence in those things. This is about the best interest of the United States. And by the way, we've been waiting for 2 months in the Senate for Mitch McConnell to bring a comprehensive bill to the floor so we could debate, compromise, vote, and he hasn't done that. So the fault is not with Democrats looking for a reason to ask for help for the post office, the fault is the Republicans that refuse to support necessary help for thousands of Americans. Unemployment compensation. Again, aid to state and local government. A long list of things they've just said turn their back on.
And it's been sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk since May 15th with no action. And the last point I just want to make is this notion about the post office not making money fundamentally misunderstands the purpose of the post office. It's a service to the American people. It would be like saying the Defense Department isn't making any money, the Commerce Department isn't making money. This is an agency which is here to serve the American people, which is in our Constitution. It is not intended to be a profit-making enterprise, and so it's a fundamental disrespect of the important role the post office has played in the history of this country and continues to play today. And again, I want to salute the postal workers. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.